G'day guys, my name's Ben. I actually bought my first investment property, a little 2-bedroom unit on the south side of Sydney when I was 24. Now, when I first started out, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I'm so grateful I continued on the journey over the last 14 years. Not only has real estate completely changed my life, but it's set my family up and it's given me choices that I couldn't imagine. Today's video, I want to just share with you the 10 reasons why I love real estate and why I invest. Now, the number one reason is the history of performance that's been proven. I read John Lindamen's book, Mastering the Australian Housing Market, where he looked at 100 years worth of returns in the Australian property market. What John found is the average property in Australia's capital cities has done almost 11% per annum for the last 100 years. Now, while I don't expect that to continue, there's some more recent data from Simon Pressley. According to Simon, over the last 50 years in Australia's capital cities, house prices have gone up by an average of 8.2% per annum. This is not only an incredible return, but it actually makes Australian real estate one of the top performing assets in the world in the last 50 years. Now, the second reason I love property is because of the Australian government's long-term vision for the future. When I recently read their 50-year vision or report for the future of Australia, I recognized that they want the Australian population to get to 60 million people. Now, with 85 to 87% of those people basing themselves between Queensland, Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth, that means that those areas are going to continue to grow from an infrastructure perspective, the incomes will continue to rise, and the populations will continue to grow. Meaning that if I can get well-located assets close to the CBDs of those markets or close to the beaches, then longer term, based on other markets around the world where the populations are larger, I should hope for longer term growth. Now, the third reason, and probably the most important reason why I invest in real estate, is leverage. One thing I love about Australian real estate is I can go borrow money from the bank to purchase property. So if I've got a 10% deposit, then they will lend me the other 90%. If I've got a 20% deposit, they'll give me the other 80%. This leverage, particularly when you're investing at an earlier stage of your life, can completely change things and your stars financially for the future. Now, an example of this is if you have $100,000 now and deciding between putting it into stocks or Australian property, and if you put that 100K into stocks and it gave you a 7% return in the first year, you'd end up with a $7,000 gain. Whereas if you put that same $100,000 into a property in Australia, the 20% deposit and bought yourself a 500K property, then a 7% return on that 500K property would be $35,000 in your first 12 months. Now, as we grow older and hold assets, that leverage compounds further and further and further, giving you more and more choices and more wealth in your long-term future. The fourth and equally big reason why I invest in property is choices. Now, if we're being real, the only reason we invest in any asset, whether it's crypto, stocks, property, businesses, is to create choices sooner in our lives so that we don't have to go all the way through to 65 or 70 and hope that we've got enough for retirement. I believe property can create exceptional choices within a 15-year period from the day that you start investing with the right strategy and plan. Now, for me, it's all about the choice to spend more time with the people I care about, to do the things that I enjoy, to be able to drop my kids at school or go see their sports carnivals, to be able to take time off during their school holidays or over Christmas. The fifth reason I love property, and this has got to be another equal first for me, I'll probably say this for most of these, is the opportunity to get not just capital growth, but also strong cash flow from the properties as well. Now, obviously with interest rates eating into that at the moment, it can affect it depending on your strategy, but there's just so many different ideas within property. You can go for the blue chip inner city stuff that's expensive, that gets great returns, but obviously the cash flow sort of sucks a little bit. Or you can potentially partner that strategy with going for the blue chip stuff, but adding something like a granny flat in New South Wales or Queensland and improving your cash flow and having that asset that grows over time, but also sprays off great cash flow and doesn't affect your day-to-day lifestyle. Another huge benefit in Australia is the government really supports property investors. So there's all sorts of things you can talk to your accountant or your tax depreciation specialist about, whether you're building a brand new property or you've got an existing property that you've cleaned up a little bit. And those tax benefits can obviously put more money at the end of the financial year back in your pocket, which you can use to pay off debt faster, save deposits for more properties, or improve the quality of your lifestyle. Another reason why I like real estate is diversification. So for me, I can choose the markets within Australia that I place my property or my assets. And knowing the longer term history of Australia, I know that Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth run on different cycles based on a whole bunch of local plus international forces. And then when you overlay that with your career or your business or your, stocks or your crypto or your currency or whatever else you do to diversify and create a well-rounded portfolio, property can be a really important play within that. Another thing that I love about property is that 70+% of my market in the average suburb within Australia is mums and dads that aren't really using property to speculate, and they're not looking at it as a liquid asset that they're trading in and out of the market. Within that, particularly in the better quality suburbs in your metro markets or your major regional towns, either close to the city centres or on the beaches, you've got mums and dads that are not just moving to the area for the school districts and the lifestyle or the job opportunities and the infrastructure, but if they have surplus income, they're putting money into renovating, into knocking down and rebuilding and improving the quality of their assets around me, which can have a really positive impact, not just in terms of the quality of the tenants that I attract and my rent returns, but obviously on my capital growth as well. The ninth reason I invest in property is it's relatively easy to learn. Now, when I was 22 and really starting to get into the idea of investing when I was at uni, I was looking at side hustles, I was looking at businesses, I was looking at stocks and property. And after I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and a number of other books from Australia's leading property analysts at the time, I realized that real estate really made sense. I could get my head around the idea of saving a deposit, talking to a banker or a mortgage broker about my money, getting a solicitor to help me with the transaction, and buying something that I could physically feel. Now, even before I had like a scientific approach and a data-backed approach to identifying the most undervalued markets and undervalued suburbs in Australia, I was still able to drive around and get an intuitive gut feel and physically walk through the property and decide very, very quickly using like a simple one-page calculation what the cash flow was going to look like for the property and if it was worth me buying or not. Now, I think the simplicity in the property and the fact that it's real and it's tangible and you can touch it and you can look at it makes it a great asset class combined with leverage for the average investor to start with. Which takes me into my final point, and that is, as a control nut and as someone who's a bit OCD, I like the fact that property has a high level of control for me as the individual investor. I can choose where I buy. I can look at the areas that are undervalued in the current market. I can add value to the property. I can do things like build a granny flat to improve the cash flow. I can get some tax depreciation benefits if I do the right thing with my accountant. And then ultimately I can sell the market, but because the market that I'm operating in is less liquid and less people are transacting in and out, it has less fluctuation and the bumps and bruises of something like a stock market. Now, that level of control and the ability to add value really suits my personality. And I think if we're all being real, suits many, many of us as investors. Now, to round it out, I'm just so grateful that I started investing in property when I did. I don't know the reason why I sort of picked up those books in the early days. Maybe it's the same reason why you're landing on our channel at the moment. But I can tell you that if you follow this journey and your intuition with this, so many things will change for the better. And it's really as simple as saving a deposit, getting a clear plan in place, getting a team around you that can support you on your journey, researching the market, and then safely making the right property with a longer term approach and following the rules that work, which is metro markets, buying quality houses close to the city or the beach in quiet streets, with tenant-ready houses that don't cost you an arm and a leg and that aren't super painful on nice big blocks of land. I think for those of you out there that are seriously thinking about buying a great property and want to do better than average on this next decision in the next 12 months, then I'd love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. Just jump over to our website, www.pumpedonproperty.com, and book in a free session where we can talk about where you are today, where you'd like to be longer term, and then we can deeply educate you on the current market and share some ideas with you from our experience and from talking and working with literally thousands of people like yourself. And then you can take that and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the extremely small number of clients that we work with each month in our buyer's agency. But either way, we wish you absolutely all the best moving forward. Like I've said 3 times now, property has completely changed my life. I'm so grateful for it, and I'm so excited to be able to share this information with you guys. Enjoy.
Woo! That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Getting
Have a
full,
spin.
bro. Yeah. Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. Look at that.
So nice, eh?
Oh.